Yeah, you need a tilt.
There she is.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi, Rachel. And you're out on your sun porch, aren't you?
I am.
Grant's giving us direction here.
You're good to go.
Okay. Well, being as we're all present, I'm gonna open the meeting. Today is the May 24th, 2021, 10 o'clock meeting of the Parks and Shade Tree Commission. I'm going to ask for a roll call from my fellow commissioners. Let's see, Ms. Ritter.
Present.
Okay. Ms. Downs.
Present.
Mr. Kesmodal.
Present.
Ms. Macha. I think we have
Present.
a full, and myself, and we have a full complement and a quorum and so forth. Also joining us is Liz Lingo, the city arborist, and Ann Womack, the city secretary, is here to keep us in line. I have Susan Gay. I don't anticipate that she will join us today, but if we need her, she's available, so I can contact her if there's some reason that we want to talk to her or something like that. But I didn't think that was going to happen. But anyway, can I pose to Ann if we have any correspondence and any of the details that we need to sort of quantify our meeting, so forth?
Well, Rachel sent out.
Well, I got that. Okay.
Okay. So
I was just going to ask Ann first because I didn't
okay.
last time, and I think I misstepped. So I don't know if I don't think we have any minutes to approve. I didn't see that available on the agenda, but anyway, but yeah, we did receive information or a mailing from Rachel of the Law Oversight Committee materials that they had, and I'm glad she sent that out. I'm just trying to we have available to us, just so the public knows, that there is on the city portal. You can see the materials that the mayor and commissioners are reviewing, and which is obviously available to us. And we are reviewing those materials and so forth and so on. The object of this, and obviously the object of this meeting, is we were asked by the mayor specifically that they are undergoing this months long, I suppose, a review of the tree ordinance that the city has had in various forms for the last 20 years or more, I think. We were invited as one of the sort of committees that's obviously involved in it and part of the ordinance, quite frankly, to weigh in on recommendations that we feel are valid or should be considered and so forth and so on. So we're going through this process, and I'm trying to align with their schedule and what they're planning on doing and when they expect to be completed. Whoa, what was that? So anyway, that's really the purpose of this meeting, and that we're going to discuss some of this, and conceivably, if we feel that it's necessary to maybe convene again. But I want to try to get this completed by our June meeting. Hopefully that we can have like a package or something to basically we can submit or provide or whatever. So that's sort of the overall kind of overarching plan. The thing I wanted to share, which I did through an email, but I'll share it with everyone, that in my conversations with Commissioner Gay, who is actually the one that's been designated to sort of handle it, or would it be the point person, as far as the commission is concerned. She has basically decided, and obviously if this is something that she's deciding that, I think we need to be aware of and to try to conform to it as best we feel we can, that she wants to use the draft ordinance, and this is the ordinance that was prepared by the Planning Commission back in 2014, that the Planning Commission, of which coincidentally I was a member, and I vaguely remember, it's been a long time, but we kind of did a very extensive review of the ordinance, and got a lot of outside people to kind of discuss, and brought in a lot of people, all that kind of stuff. But in addition to that, we prepared a draft ordinance, which was kind of a revamping somewhat of the existing ordinance. I think it got reordered in some ways, somewhat simplified. I mean, I think a lot of people would still look at it and think it's still kind of a complicated document, but unfortunately, these things with the kind of detail and everything that needs to be included, it ends up, just by virtue of what it is somewhat complicated at first exposure to it or whatever. But anyway, that's kind of where Susan is coming from, and so I don't see that in any way as any kind of impediment as far as we're concerned. It isn't like we can only address that. That's not the point of this. It was just that's the framework she's going to use. So if as we put together the things that we think are worthy of comment or worthy of discussion, and I'm not saying that we have to. I'm not suggesting that we put it into ordinance language or anything. I mean, I think the only thing that I would probably suggest is that we, to the extent we can, to maybe, like, if we have a particular comment about something, let's say tree caliper or something like that, that we just designate in that draft ordinance where that might be, or something like that. So, and that's just basically as an assist to, as they're going to be kind of collating and combining all these things from various sources. That's kind of where it might be, But even if that's not written in stone or anything, I'm just trying to get as orderly as we can in this process, So that's the extent of it, and that was really the only reason that I shared it with you. And the only reason I really shared it with you is because we didn't have a Word document that's editable if you wanted to change the language or something, or come up with a different phrase or something like that, and that would be helpful. Again, not necessary, but that was the point of it. So anything else that we're dealing with certainly with regard to the law oversight committee's work that had done, other comments by other people in the past. The other question was, and this group had been polled before in that previous study and so forth, and there was a response made to it. I'm not certain. You tell me, but because obviously a number of you weren't around for that, I think. But did you have input? And if you didn't have input, and you would like, I want to give you the opportunity, all of us, the opportunity, basically, to weigh in. So if you felt like your comments weren't heard or whatever, this is the opportunity. So that's kind of where I'm going with this thing. So I to the extent that we're going to discuss this, we can. I don't really know where you guys are, you people. Sorry, no inflection on that. Where you all are, but if we're prepared to talk about some of this, great. If we're not, but I am suggesting. I'm just saying that's the way I expect this is going to flow. That we might want to schedule another meeting before our next meeting, if that is going to work out okay with everybody. I don't know, I obviously have talked to Ann about that in terms of when we might be able to do that. And I suppose, more than suppose, I expect that we're going to meet together to do that. So, and that would be kind of nice, I think. And I think would be more conducive for discussion and so forth if we're all together and all that. So anyway, I'll open it to the assembled group here about how you feel about this. But if you want to talk about specific topics, that's great. That's great. But if we want to, if we don't think it's worth spending the time on, but I'm just looking at that. We were asked to provide input. I think it's not only am I appreciative that we were asked, but also that it's a great opportunity for us to provide input and to be part of that process. So that's my long-winded 2 cents. Okay, sorry. So anybody have any comments or whatever?
Well, I mean, I've been looking at all of this stuff for a long time with, through the different commissions. And, I mean, I think that the, draft ordinance that was put out, by but the one that Susan, the one that you sent out that Susan sent.
The 2014, I call it the draft ordinance done by the Planning Commission in 2014. If we could come up with an acronym or something, that'd be great. But anyway.
The 2014 version. I've gone through that a couple of times, and there are some things that I think should be removed. I mean, I truly believe that when we're talking about, if it's going to be a tree ordinance, it should be strictly trees, nothing about landscaping, nothing about the shrubs, bushes, and all other woody vegetation. And I mean, I just think that, I think it waters the whole thing down, and we need to make it more concise and strictly about trees, as opposed to about other plant material on city or city property, basically.
Sure. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what, I mean, I know they have definitions and there's reference to all that kind of stuff, but I don't know if any of it is really provides any protection or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it's conceivable we can streamline it and take that stuff out of there. I'm in no way being critical of that, but I don't know how much the ordinance actually has any kind of effect on landscaping per se, other than there might, I'd have to go back and look, quite frankly, I don't know.
There are just things like the, if that's going to be what's used for the backbone of what we're talking about, then I mean, there's some things that should be addressed.
Okay.
Probably first, before we start changing, start trying to change that one around. I mean, okay. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know, I can send this to either to you or to my notes to either you or to Commissioner Gay.
No, well, I was hoping that we would have an opportunity basically just to kind of look it over. And again, I don't think any of this, at least the way I'm envisioning this process, I don't expect us to have any kind of filter. If you have comments about that, absolutely, you're gonna, please bring those comments forward. We can start to compile them or whatever, however you want to do that. I was merely just kind of setting up a framework that would ultimately be acceptable to what the mayor and commissioner are ultimately going to do with it. But generally, what you're talking about obviously sounds like a general comment, and that the ordinance suddenly need to have this kind of language in it, or therefore whatever. But so a valid comment, valid comment. So we can include it. So so I would just I'll make the suggestion now. If you've got sort of like ideas or topics, or however you want to define it, or how full-fledged they are, if you got something really written out and all that kind of stuff, or just a general idea. I mean, I have a list here, of things that I think I want to talk about, that we can put them, share them with ourselves. We're not going to correspond and talk about them, but at least put them out there. And I mean, the only kind of really editing that I foresee is if we've got like duplicate items and things like that, to combine things or try to come up with something that basically on the same topic or something like that, and just make, so we don't have, this is what Laura said, this is what Katie said, this kind of stuff, but it can be addressed by you. I mean, I'm not talking about taking your name off it or any of that kind of stuff. Rachel?
I just wanted to come back to the documents that I sent that we had worked on. As I know everyone here didn't work on it, but about a year ago, we
Sure.
had actually worked on revisions to the tree ordinance. Do we know what happened with that document? I know it was submitted back. I'm not quite sure where it went. I thought it went to the Board of Commissioners.
I don't know. I don't know if they reviewed it. I mean, and when I say that, I mean in the context of a meeting or a workshop meeting or something like that. I don't know how it was treated. I mean, and the thing is, when we're talking about this 2014 document, that was never addressed. It basically went on the shelf. I mean, it has never been intended to, and that was. For some of my colleagues, I will say on the Plan Commission, it's kind of a little, frustrating thing that it never really got dealt with. But to be honest, right after we did that in 2015, we had this whole, there was like so many other things that came about that took the attention away from that, with regard to the zoning ordinance and all that kind of stuff that happened and later, and it's just one of those things that it just never got back on the table, but so that's really what has transpired. I'm not being in any way critical of anybody, but in answer to your question, I don't know. I don't know exactly if they did discuss it or not. Laura?
I'd just like to say we're like a quarter of the way through the meeting. Could we just, I've tried to plow through all these documents, and having not been part of it for all this time, it is just really confusing because there's so much language that's the same, and then to figure out what the particular changes are it's just, I don't have any suggestions at this point. So I would like to go through, like if somebody has, like Katie wants to take out something specific. So if she could just say specifically why that should not be there. I don't have any content to go on at this point. It's just a bunch of words to me at this point. I don't see what the struggle over different versions is. So if somebody could clarify the main issues that are a problem in the document, it would be really helpful to me. I don't have any comment whatsoever. It's just, I think the main thing is those 7 things that we're supposed to decide on. And if those remain the 7 things we're supposed to decide on,
Sure.
why should we even comment? What the rest of it is just legal stuff. Glenn can take care of. To me, I don't understand I don't know what the conflicts are.
Okay.
Well,
Glenn, do you want to respond to that? I mean, I think I can, but it would be helpful.
Is there a big issue that we need to comment on?
So as I've been listening to this, I think that, let me step back first. You asked about the comments that the planning or that Parks and Shade Tree Commission made last year. Those did get submitted to the Board of Commissioners. I recall looking at the cover letter that the former chairperson used to submit those. But I don't think, like the Planning Commission's recommendation, I don't think the Parks and Shade Tree Commission's recommendations went anywhere, ever got reviewed, probably because of so many other things getting in the way, and it never rose to the level of a priority. I think, sort of, you might want to, rather than going into the tree ordinance and going one by one, should we edit this, change that, pull this out, put this in? I almost wonder whether you want to have a more holistic discussion about, first, is the tree ordinance working for its purposes? And if it is, then maybe not a whole lot needs to be done. If it isn't working for its purposes, then we can start talking about, I think, what areas, where is it falling down? I mean, for example, I think Liz and I have struggled over the years to deal with replacement caliper. I mean, there's supposed to be this really in-depth analysis of, if these trees come out, then what trees go back in, and how much caliper was removed, and how much caliper exists on the lot, and do they get a credit for that caliper? To me, that has become a very difficult set of provisions to apply. And Liz, I don't know if you'd agree or not, but I think it's almost fallen down in that area, where the Parks and Shade Tree Commission pretty much doesn't do the analysis anymore. They simply, this body simply says, these trees can or cannot come out, and are we going to require a tree or not require a tree, or a fee in lieu of mitigation? Nobody really gets down to the nitty gritty of, there were 17 calipers removed. That means we need to replace it with 4 trees of 3-inch caliper. And, so we never really get into that. So I think you should talk about, is that something that's worth maintaining in the ordinance, or is there another way to address it that accomplishes the goal in a more easily applied manner? And I think there's probably 2 or 3 areas we could talk about that I've seen are provisions in the ordinance that are just falling down, and we really don't apply them the way that they were intended to be applied. So I think you can take 2 approaches. One is holistic review. Is it working? Is it not working? If it's not working, then let's talk about what major areas need fixed. Or you can go to a more granular level and just start going line by line, and try to figure out what you might want to change. I don't know. I mean, Liz, you apply it day to day. Are there areas that you would say, over here, this is all good, but this area is just like, it doesn't work?
If I were the commission members, I would probably start with the overarching premise. So do we agree with the overall objectives, purpose of the existing tree code? Do we agree with the new one, right? Because they are slightly different. And then I would look at the existing tree code, and like you said, okay, here's our objectives. We agree on this. Is this tree code helping us meet our objectives? Where is it falling short? Now in the draft, does it address those issues? So it's falling short on A, B, C, D. Well, does the proposed draft by the Law Oversight Committee address those 3 main concerns we have? I think that would probably be the best, rather than going line by line, because the commission really only sees, the majority of what they see are fee in lieu of mitigation. And in the new one, that's just people writing a check, unless they want to appeal the actual cost of the fee in lieu of mitigation. So the role would be the amount of cases coming to them, because the street trees and the fee in lieu of mitigation would not be coming to the commission anymore. So it would be, time for the commission would be dramatically reduced, and they'd be focused on appeals, more like denials of tree removal permits.
And that's,
which is really the intent, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, Liz. And Ned, you and I worked on this other document, a year ago, and
Uh-oh, I lost Rachel.
We dropped you.
you lost me?
Oh, you're back.
So could you restate that? We lost you there for a second.
Oh, okay. I know Ned is on here as well, but that was the path that we were taking, just as Liz described. It was really meant to be more of an appeal structure that we would then get involved with, and really, folks didn't want to pay for the fee. They would appeal it and bring it to us, which is really what, at the time, as I recall, the Park Shade and Tree Commission felt was their kind of real role.
Mm-hmm.
Ned, do you agree?
Well, I really like the 2-page Hoyt-Decker version, and I can handle the 8-page version. I think it's really pretty good. It also handles the mitigation thing because it's pretty simple. It's not complicated. And, you know, I think the simpler the better, because the wordier you get, people are just going to tune it out and do their own thing. If you make it simple where everyone can understand it, then people will follow it. So
Again, I'm telling you, all these are valid comments, and it's just a matter of, I think, and I don't, and I really honestly didn't anticipate this to be sort of us critiquing either or any of the draft ordinance and so forth. I was more thinking in terms of, again, and more or less echoing what you're saying, Glenn, and Rachel as well, that or you know, do we feel that I mean, let me just step. I'm going to step back a little bit. You know, I think we all have we may have our opinions about it that really aren't grounded in the work that we've done with the Parks and Shade Tree Commission. You may see other things that you haven't been exposed to, and you still say, I think it should be changed for this reason, even though it's not something that directs us. It, you know, has a direct effect on our work here. But and I think that's valid as well. I'm envisioning this process is, if you got any good ideas, or you have a thing that you think is worth mentioning or worth bringing to the fore, bring it. You know, so. But at the same time, I don't want to get buried in weeds and all that kind of stuff and trying to, you know, go through this stuff. I mean, I think if you read it and you say, this makes sense to me, you know, and I'm not going to make any comment on it, great. But, and if there's, you know, large swaths of this that you think need to be altered or changed, and none of the things that you've seen so far seem to be addressing that, or if they are, and you should say, I think this addresses that problem well here, or whatever. I'm just trying to get educated people, you know, who have had experience to weigh in. That's really what I'm seeing.
Well, what I'm saying is, I think that Hoyt-Decker group spent several years working on that. And I think they solved a lot of the problems with the old one, including the mitigation. And I think that should be the basis for people to go forward, because I think it was pretty well thought out and had a lot of input from a lot of people.
Right. And what I'm saying, I'm not saying that the planning commission thing is going to supersede that. All I'm saying is, I think she saw it basically as a structure. That's all. It wasn't so much the content; it was more the structure of it. And that's why I brought it to you, simply because that was what she was looking at. You know, that, for what it's worth. But hey, let me, before we in a moment, I'll pass it to Katie. But I feel like from what Liz said, you know, in terms of what's the overall objective. I mean, one of the issues that I feel is not as well sort of spelled out or whatever is the objective. You know, I mean, they raise the objective to like what the values are, which is in a way kind of lifted out of the comprehensive development plan kind of language and so forth. But does the city really have a means to measure, you know, in terms of you know, we are a tree city. We are concerned about tree canopy, or do we have any means by which to sort of like know, is the canopy being diminished? Is it being whatever? I don't think the city has a real means to do that. And that's, to me, that's one of the things that I would like to have included in this, is a way that the city, whether they adopt it or not, you know, a way to basically measure what kind of progress or whatever, or the conditions that exist in the city. So, you know, from that, you know, I think everything sort of obviously, you know, falls from that in terms of the size of caliper trees, what trees are going to be protected, what are not, and then the mitigation. One of the things that I would like to see, I think, is that we kind of got all kind of wrapped around. It got so confusing with regard to caliper. A giant caliper tree equates to like 100 other replacement trees, which I think is kind of it doesn't really make sense because trees grow. I think that the status should be that a tree of a certain size should be planted that would grow, or a multiple of several trees, but not like 20 would grow to replace that tree canopy. So the size of the mitigation would probably be less if they couldn't do it, and so forth and so on. So and then the other object is if people want to replace a tree. I have a tree on my front yard that has been dying for the last 11 years since I was, or actually longer than that, I'm going to say. But I can't really do anything with it until it finally completely crumbles to the ground. I would like to replace that tree, and with a nicer, hardier tree, so I feel I should be able to do that, even though it's not technically dying. I guess it is dying, but it's still with us, that kind of thing. So anyway, that's just, I'm using that as an example. But I'm sorry, Katie, you had a comment.
Oh no, I try to interpret the code, and when I'm working on projects, and I think it's a challenge when people say, I want to take down a tree. I mean, and if they're allowed to take down a tree, that's fine. But I mean, like, how it's very difficult to know how many I need to replace it with. And, I don't know, perhaps I just haven't done the math correctly, but I don't know. And, that's a challenge. And I think that that's one of the things, like you were saying, and I think Liz was saying that, or, somebody was saying it, that, it needs to be, I think it needs to be spelled out someplace very easily for people, like a range, like a, I don't know, 4 to 6 inch tree, you have to replace it with one. There was something in all of the stuff that I've read through that went sort of into that, but just like, it just needs to be made very easy. Like if you take down a 12 to 24 inch tree, you have to replace it with 2 trees. If you take down a 24 to 36 inch tree, you've got to replace it with 3 trees. If you take down anything larger than that, you've got to replace it with 4 to 5 trees. I mean, just so that the people that are working on the properties and the homeowners can say, okay, so if I want to try to take down this tree, I need to be prepared to either find a place for these replacements on my lot, or I need to be prepared to pay to take my tree down and to pay to plant trees, street trees and park trees someplace, pay into a fund.
Right.
I mean, I think there needs to be something that's just a breakdown that's very easy for people.
Right. But I mean, I think that's kind of what I think Glenn was saying that has historically been the
Right.
difficulty of the ordinance, and obviously, I think we as well as others are mindful of that, and I think that's going to be probably the excuse me, the focus of nailing that down as far as the commissioners are concerned. But I for whatever reason that it was put into the ordinance that it's like caliper per caliper. I think that's kind of wrong-headed, because trees are different. They have different structure. They have all that kind of stuff. And I think it should be sort of, I think we're really ultimately talking for as far as shade trees are concerned, being a tree that's going to be 30 feet tall or something like that, or however it's defined. There's it should be canopy for canopy. So.
I can interject. I've worked in a bunch of different municipalities, and I've seen it both ways, where it's just straight up inch for inch. Doesn't even matter what you have on your property at all. There's no mitigation. And I've seen it like what Katie was talking about, which is a tree from X inches to X inches has to be replaced with one tree. A tree from 20 inches to 24 inches has to be replaced with 3 trees. Mm-hmm. Now, originally, the law oversight draft did have that. Now, I believe they changed it to just one replacement in certain circumstances, regardless of the size. I think, but one of there's a couple of changes I think you guys should take note of is the penalties and fees, because those can get appealed. And the penalties, I believe, were reduced from the existing to the new one. I'm looking through it now, but I can't find it. I want to say they reduced it down to $250. Does anybody recall seeing that?
I recall seeing that there was something that you'd have to pay $600 for
the replacement tree.
A tree,
mm-hmm.
and that was increased. That was in the info that Rachel sent, the $600, and then they increased something else to $1,200.
I'm not sure about the $1,200. The $600 is the fee in lieu of mitigation. So instead of it going to you all, it would be administrative, and it would just be $600 a tree. So instead of them coming to you and saying, we have to plant 10 trees, but we can't, so we need a fee in lieu, and you guys set the fee at $700 per tree for 10 trees or whatever you set, they wouldn't come to you for that now. It would just be a check handled administratively.
It's $600 per tree.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So in violations and penalties, it's a civil penalty of $150. A protected tree removed or destroyed would be $1,200. But nothing about replacement.
See, I think one of the things that needs to be in the tree ordinance is to make it way more expensive if you take a tree out that's supposed to be in there, that's like if you are when you build your house, you have to have the one hardwood tree, one canopy tree in the front yard, and if you take that down and without replacing it, then I think that there should be a much steeper fine levied than $1,200 or whatever it is. I think it should be, it should.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I don't think our current one is enough, and it's more than that. So right now what it is it's a fine of $250 to $500 per tree removed without a permit. But on top of that, you have to replant inch for inch, and that's the real cost. It's not $500 for a tree. It's if you take down a 20-inch tree, you're looking at 7 trees at $700 to $1,000 to replace it with.
Okay.
So in that sense, the draft is a lot easier on
Okay.
the tree removal without a permit. The fine money amount went up, but I don't think the planting, well, it's a question. It just doesn't say anything about planting requirements. It's light in the details and that. So.
But in practical matters, most of the time, there's no way that you can plant, like what I'm saying is you have this sort of penalty that you really can't exercise because there's just no way to do it. And so it ultimately becomes a financial, a financial equation instead of trying to get trees back, you know what I mean? So
you'd be surprised at how often they do plant those amount of trees, because that's the quickest way, like, to resolve it. So people will plant a hedge of hornbeams or a hedge of junipers. So it's not uncommon.
Okay.
I'd say probably more people do that than when they're caught. Probably
Right.
more people do that than come to you and try and appeal because they already know they were in the wrong. So.
But I mean, but again, does allowing that fulfill it? Doesn't sound like it does. You're not getting really, again, back to the canopy. You're not getting canopy out of that. So.
Well, a hornbeam can have canopy, but you also have to think canopy is not the only purpose of trees, right? There's a multitude of other benefits associated with small and large species and native species, and even some of the ornamentals. So just because they're planting a dozen small species, yes, you don't have the canopy, say, one oak would have, but it doesn't mean there's no value in them. There's still
but
value.
I don't think I don't think it's equivalent. Assuming
canopy is one out of, that's the focus of the code, but it's only one out of like a dozen different things. So who's to say that more carbon couldn't be stored in a dozen hornbeams than one oak, or more birds would end up nesting in those hornbeams than one oak? That would take a lot of scientific research. I would tend to agree with you that one oak has more value overall, but for the intent of the code, it meets the letter of the code, so to speak, if not the intent necessarily.
Laura, and you look like you're muted.
I kind of agree though with Katie that when people take out a big tree in the front yard that does shade the street and that everybody enjoys, there should be, maybe that should have a different penalty than a tree that's in the backyard and the roots are going under the shed and all that kind of stuff. Those trees, we need those big canopy trees that are shading the streets and that everybody enjoys from the sidewalk. And I think some of these new houses that are going up, those are the ones that they take out. And maybe they should have, if the fine were steep enough or the requirements were high enough, maybe they would move the house a little bit and not take out those trees. So I would like to protect those trees. I would like to have a special protection for trees that are facing the street and shading the sidewalks and are providing canopy. I think we need, I agree with Liz that other trees in the back and the hedges have importance, but I don't think that we shouldn't have to decide one or the other. Those big trees that shade the sidewalks should have special protection. I think that that's an important part of going forward. Some kind of special protection. Either it's more expensive and you have to plant more or something, but it should be harder. Like Katie said, it should cost a little bit to do something a tree that we all enjoy because it's right in the front yard.
Well, I think something that the commission, now this wouldn't directly affect your appeals and stuff, but if we refer to when you act, one of the biggest changes to me in this ordinance is when you actually need a tree permit. So if we look at the definition of protected tree, so you need a tree permit for any protected tree. A protected tree in this code is any tree that's counted as part of your minimum density, so any of those three, or any tree that is in a setback area. So the setbacks, say in R1, 15 feet front yard, they don't really address how the side yard could be because it's an aggregate. So it could be 6 on one side, 10 on the other, and then 15 in the back. So the way this code is written, that any tree that falls in the center of a lot, so not in those setbacks, so right on the setback line in the center, it can be removed without a permit. So we will have absolutely no control. It could be a 40-inch oak, and if it sits in the center of the lot, it can be gone, and we have nothing, not even a permit to keep track of it. So we lose a lot of control with this definition of protected tree. And I think, to me, it's the main fatal flaw of this. I think going from a tree ordinance we have that protects trees to just saying, any tree that's not in the setback, one day it's going to get removed, so you can remove it now without a permit. To me, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well,
Agreed.
Liz, they can't remove the tree unless they have applied for a building permit.
No, you need
They
to
can't just say it's going to be
well,
potentially I'm going to build a house there so I can take it down. No, that doesn't work that way.
well, that's not how the code reads, if that is the intent.
You have to have a building permit in order to take the tree down.
It just has definition of protected tree and then says a tree removal permit shall be required for the removal of any protected tree.
Well,
So that means you don't have to have a tree removal permit for any non-protected tree.
again, it goes back to the problem with the city. If they allow houses as big as they are, then there's really very little room for trees.
Well,
And that's the
I'll
problem.
agree with that. Is by the time you take the setbacks with the encroachments, because don't forget sheds can encroach, all kinds of different things. Driveways are in the side setback. Walkways can be in the side setback. I mean, and then you have a minimum of a 3-foot overdig. So you end up with very little. The trees have to be, during construction, they have to be located in a perfect spot in order to even be considered for survival. I mean, I had one the other day. The tree is so large that even though it's in the setback, it's gonna be, they would physically cut into the trunk of the tree to build the house.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, and there's just no way around it. And it was upsetting because it was a nice tree, and I'm sure they didn't want to incur the $5,000 expense of removing it. But yeah, I mean, and that's something that this tree code, we can't control what may or may not ever happen with the zoning code. Maybe they'll increase the setbacks, maybe they'll decrease them. That's beyond any scope we could ever hope to discuss or project.
Well, I think that I think to Ned's point, I truly believe that, I mean, I love the fact that we're talking about the tree code, but I think that we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. I mean, we need to address the size. I mean, the size of the house that can be built on the lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we want more trees, then we need to make the houses a little smaller, the footprint a little smaller. Because
we actually did that, Katie. You know, actually since the draft, the 2014 draft that the Planning Commission did, we increased the rear setback to 15 feet, which it wasn't before. It was 10.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
there actually is
pretty big.
we decreased coverage.
Yeah, right.
We
and the
decreased coverage by 10%, I believe.
Yeah, right.
But there are still some. I mean, we just have small lots, and that's what makes it hard. I mean, the encroaching front porches also make it very difficult because when you add in the driveways, the walkways, and the front porch, you're left with almost no front yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happened to my neighbor. There is almost no front yard, and yet it was to code. and they
Mhm.
planted a dogwood in the front, but that's not the same as the trees that were there before. So,
Yep.
Well, I
you know
mean,
what, we-
people can build smaller houses, but that's, yeah,
Because
but
Rare.
But obviously they don't. I mean,
Right.
and if,
Right.
unless they're forced to build smaller houses, they don't build smaller houses.
yeah, but what we can do is make it more expensive for them to, so then they have to choose. Do we want to spend the $20,000 on buying more trees, or do we want to, if we make it a little bit harder, that would be an encouragement, a little more expensive, that would be an encouragement to build a little bit smaller so you can maybe not lose all the trees. I don't know. I think we can just, we're not going to be able to change the zoning code, but we can at least make
No.
it more expensive, because what's happening now is you have investors that are building, and if they don't have any limits, they're going to build every square inch that they can build. That's just the way it's going to be. But if we make it more expensive to do that, they might build a little bit smaller.
Well, and keep in mind, there are techniques that contractors around here aren't employing because they're more expensive, or maybe they're disallowed in the zoning code. That if tree removal and or replacement was more expensive, it might force them to start air spading instead of just ripping the roots, right? So things like that.
Agree with
It's not just a financial penalty, but providing incentives. I mean, our existing tree code has, and we lose this ability in the draft, but in the existing tree code, every new home goes through a review period. After the building inspector confirms it's a buildable plan, it comes to me and I review it for tree retention. Right in the code, it says they have to the best of their abilities, try and retain trees on their lot during the design phase. So it comes to me and they have a front walkway straight through the middle of a 30-inch oak. They're not getting approved. They're going to either come to Park and Shade, or they're going to reroute that walkway and curve it around the tree. So we do have a little bit of leeway now with that. And I'd say about, I'm going to think percentages. I'd say out of the last like 6 that I can think of that I've made those requests, rotating a pool, rotating a patio, moving a front walkway, I think out of the last 6, only 1 is coming to Park and Shade. So the other 5 all elected to do what we very nicely suggested, to retain valuable trees. So, and you guys wouldn't necessarily see that side. You see the one appeal coming to you where they want their front walkway through the middle of a tree. But we're doing the best we can, and we have to realize with construction, any construction will have tree removal, and we're just trying to minimize it. But to Katie's point, it is right now the way it works. If you fill out a tree permit, I go out, inspect the tree, but then I also tell you your planting requirements, and it would be a lot nicer. Like Katie knows that you have to have a tree in the front yard, so she would always include that. But in terms of mitigation, you almost have to wait for me to tell you what the mitigation calculations are, because it is complicated. It's close to as complicated as the square footage for the zoning code. So it would have been nice to have that laid out, like she said, so that I wouldn't have to go out, review the tree plan, review the tree permit, come back, say you need 3 trees, 1 in the front yard, minimum size this, here are the species, maximum 1 evergreen, submit me your plan for review. Because at that point, the city is losing money. The minute I go back to somebody and tell them we need a tree plan, that $50 fee we collect for a tree permit, that time is out. We're losing money on my time, and the city really needs, I mean, we're not in it to make money, but we're supposed to cover our expenses, and we are not when we do that.
Right. And from a design standpoint, it just makes it way more difficult, because
Yep.
I can't submit to Liz a plan that's, so she can just look at it and go, okay, well, you've got your number of trees here that I need to, if you take this one tree out that you're asking, then you've got the number of trees that you need to replace it. So, I mean, what I tried to do is just put so many darn trees in that like that she's
Well,
like,
and Kate,
okay.
you're a designer, you're a professional, so imagine how mind-boggling this can be to just a regular homeowner who doesn't even know, when I say it has to be a 3-inch caliper, doesn't even know what caliper is, right?
Yeah, exactly. What's that?
Yeah. And that's the point when I usually suggest they get a landscaper. But I mean, but like you shouldn't have, if they just want to take out one tree and it has to be replanted with one tree, obviously they're not going to get a landscaper. And it's no problem to explain, call the nursery. They'll tell you what a 3-inch caliper tree, they'll pick them out for you. One of these on this list. But it could be a lot smoother process.
Well, I, for one, would like to retain the thing where Liz gets to look at the plan and make suggestions, because I think, as she said, like 5 out of 6 people went ahead with the suggestions and preserved the trees. And if that's what's important to all of us, that seems to be something that we should try to retain, because I think she's managed to retain a lot of trees that way. So
we try.
Take out the tool that we have to keep some trees there. That seems
I certainly don't get them all, but I think everyone where we make a suggestion and they say sure, no problem, or yes, we'll elect to do that, I think it's a victory in the tree canopy. And to make it clear, we're not doing that for a tree that's replaceable. So a 8-inch oak that can be replanted with a 3-inch oak, that's not worth making people change their plans. Or a 6-inch holly or a 10-inch redbud. Those are easily replaced. We're talking our shade trees, our specimen trees, 30-inch loblollies, 20-inch oaks, stuff like that. So we're not making people spend extra time and money on trees that are smaller and easily replaced.
Well, I, for one, would like to suggest that we retain that part of the original ordinance. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but that part sounds important to me.
I like the idea of suggest. I think it's great to make the suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
But to insist or to make somebody change it when they legally can do it is another story.
Well, so what it is now, it is and it isn't a suggestion. So you take this suggestion, the plan is approved. You don't take the suggestion, you go to park and shade. If there's no consequence, we don't want to take your suggestion, and then we have to issue tree removal permits anyways, there's no point in even doing the review, quite frankly, because nobody will take the suggestion at that point. Maybe 1 out of every 25 people.
So if we increase the fees for removing the trees, then removing protected trees, then I mean, we think that the builders might actually employ some of the new ways of protecting trees. I mean, is that do you honestly believe that would work? Because if it would work, I mean, that would be awesome.
Maybe not. I think it depends. I mean, in one place I worked, the tree permit fee, Washington, D.C., the tree permit fee is based on the site. Now, they start higher. I think it's at like 14 inches where you need a permit. But they charge per circumference inch. And those permits I had permits that sometimes cost more than the actual tree removal. And for some people, it worked. And for some people, they did not care and money was no object. They just wanted the tree gone.
And I'm sure money would be no object for a lot of people down here. But
yeah, some people.
Time we get money to plant trees elsewhere, and then and it's a big amount of money. So I don't know. We have to do something to reduce the number of beautiful big trees that are getting removed. And we have to protect those trees that are in the middle of lots and are not in setbacks. I think that is another thing that should be tightened up, because if you take out a big tree like that, you should have to plant something somewhere else to replace the canopy that you're taking out, just because you want a house instead of a tree in the middle of your lot.
Well,
I don't know.
Funky, I'm sorry. I have an 11 o'clock appointment. I do need to scoot. I apologize.
okay, well, can we, just real quick, can, I think this discussion at least has our thinking caps, we have our thinking caps on, I think, but I would like to suggest that we schedule another meeting. Is everybody okay with that?
I am. But
Yes.
I need the list of the other things that of substance that because just reading through things, I kind of missed all these substance, like that they took out the.
Okay, well, let me make this proposal, if I may. I don't know if we have to vote on this or not, but I'd just like to, I think it would be helpful if we maybe convene. I'll have to check with Ann when that might be, but hopefully, maybe somewhere in the middle of next month, possibly 2 weeks or so before our June meeting. But in the meantime, I think it's appropriate, and I think it should be okay if we just basically pass our topics around, or I'll try to summarize what we talked about today as possible topics, and then if you all have other suggestions or areas that you want, I mean, I'm just saying, let's just, let's just share them with one another, and then we can get them together and then discuss them at that meeting, and then hopefully, from that we'll have the meat of what we want to be able to share or thing. And again, I don't think I didn't want to really put any kind of value judgment on this with regard to we collectively are making these. If you have a particular comment, you have a valid comment, so and we're going to pass it on. So I didn't see that as being a unified voice from us. It was just basically recommendations or suggestions or whatever coming through us. That's all. So is everybody okay with that? And I'll share this with Rachel because she had to go. But we schedule another meeting, and then I'll send materials out, and then basically we can kind of collect those thoughts, suggestions.
Can I make a suggestion, since this is the second meeting you guys have had to discuss this, that maybe everybody is able to send the chair individually, obviously, a couple of bullet points of things that maybe they like or they want to see changed or added, either related to the existing or the new code. And that way, you guys can start to formulate an actual response to the mayor and commissioners, so that I bet the chair will find that several people write the same things, so that instead of everybody having 10 bullet points and there being 50, it might only be 25.
Right, exactly.
And I think if there are questions, they could be on there too. Like, I don't understand X, Y, Z. Just so we have something in writing that's easier to discuss and can get. Did they tell you guys when they wanted the comments by?
No.
That's what I'm saying. I want to have this to them by our June meeting. So
You mean after our June meeting? Because I don't think we're going to finalize it until after the June meeting. I mean,
no, I would like to have a meeting before the June meeting, a little workshop meeting. That's what I'm suggesting, that we discuss it, and then
we aren't going to have anything finalized in one more meeting. We're still discussing.
Well, I'm just saying, but I think we can discuss it I think we'd have sort of like a final thing.
Yes, at our June meeting.
And then we'll discuss it at the June meeting. We'll bless it. It might require some minor editing or something. Then we just pass it on. We basically agree what we're going to have.
This might be more of a question for Glenn, but would those recommendations that the commission puts forward, would they have to be voted on?
Yeah, you want to vote on it as a group at a meeting, whatever final recommendations get forwarded. Right. And I appreciate the Liz.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And they may, and like I say, we would make if there wasn't revision of it or something like that, based upon what we said at the meeting, and then make that change. So we don't have
Yeah,
to
so
come back.
hopefully, yeah, your
And,
workshop,
I
you
mean,
can,
I don't.
yeah, so hopefully the workshop, you can hammer out all your comments, details, questions, and then have them finalized to vote on for your actual meeting to send to the mayor and commissioners.
Right. And
Theoretically.
basically what I'm saying, even at that final meeting, there might be some changes, probably not, hopefully not significant, that we could agree that that's what we want to do, and then we would effectively be done with it at the June meeting. So
Sounds like a plan to me.
and obviously we don't know yet if we're going to have anything at the June meeting. It's possible, so we're just going to have to
Yes,
accommodate that.
we will have stuff at the June meeting.
We will. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but
Unless something
Excuse me,
dramatically
Chair?
changes.
yeah, well,
Excuse me, Chair.
but we can prepare for that. We can prepare for that. So I mean we can continue discussing if you want, but if you
And
think
it's
this
trying
is
to get your attention,
and
to get your attention.
and
Chair, if you're planning on having a workshop or a special meeting, I would suggest that you try to set that meeting today.
okay. I was going to ask you that. I mean, what do you have an open time? I'm thinking. I don't have my calendar in front of me here, but like what's 2 weeks from now? Is that date available?
7th. June 7th.
Okay, that's bad, because
Okay.
that's workshop for the mayor and commissioners.
How about the week after?
I don't
Because
have
when's
anything
the
scheduled.
June meeting? What date's the June meeting?
I don't have anything scheduled for June 14th at this point in time.
Okay.
And June
'Cause
28th.
what date's the June meeting?
28.
Okay, so that's good. I mean, I think it'd be like 2 weeks before our meeting, right?
Yes.
Just FYI, if our next meeting is on the 28th of June, I will not be in attendance.
Okay.
Just wanted to make that known.
Okay. So can we do that, Ann? Can we schedule a workshop meeting?
Okay, now my question is, are you planning on trying to finalize anything on the 14th?
No.
Okay, then it can be considered a workshop. If you are planning on
Right.
trying to finalize anything, then it would have to be considered a special meeting.
Okay, I would anticipate that we would basically have, I would anticipate that it's gonna need some final revision, which
Yeah, but
is
Ann-
something that I can work on.
But
Is
Ann,
that
if you're saying
agreeable?
they want this to be a voting meeting though, Ann, I could see them getting down to being between two versions of one subset. They're gonna want to vote on it. So I would set it up as a special meeting.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what I was
That's
thinking.
fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that gives us more flexibility, I would think, right?
Okay, so now also you realize as of June 1st, your meetings will be held in-house in the commissioner's room.
Right.
And you're gonna still hold to the 10 o'clock in the morning time frame?
Does that work for everybody?
It's gonna be hard for me. 10 o'clock part isn't too bad. But Monday, do we have to always meet on a Monday?
Not as a special meeting, but generally as your regular meetings, those are set dates for each of the months. And your meetings are held on the fourth Monday of the month.
I mean, we can make it another time if that's helpful. Is there another day that we could do it that would work for you?
I'm just gonna have to check my calendar a little bit here. Well, let's just go ahead and do it this time up, but I'll have to come. I'm not going to be in Rehoboth on either of those dates, so I'll have to come for the meeting on both of those dates. That's okay, I can do that.
No, just to be clear, the new order does allow for remote participation. So if you
No, I
get,
was going to ask that.
yeah, the new order does still allow for remote participation. So the city
Oh.
manager is encouraging in-person meetings starting June 1. But if you're away for a reason or another, there's still an allowance for virtual participation.
Oh, then we're fine.
Yeah.
Glenn, how's that handled with a quorum? Doesn't there need to be a quorum in person?
Not currently under the governor's order. Once we go out
Okay.
of the state of pandemic, we will have to have a quorum in person, but presently, no. He hasn't changed that.
Okay.
So
That's good.
Right.
Yeah.
10 o'clock on the 14th.
Okay.
Is that what we're doing?
I think so. Is that correct, Ann?
Yes,
In the
Okay.
commissioner's room?
All right.
Is
yes.
Okay.
All right.
And then your regular meeting will be on June 28th. And I'm assuming that you're still holding with the 10 o'clock meeting for that.
Right.
Okay.
How about, is that okay?
I
Okay.
just got an email from one of the IT members, and he's saying that committee members cannot call in remotely.
Cannot?
That's what he had put down.
And is that committee or commission?
Committee. Committee members cannot call in remotely, only the public.
Okay, so
Is
do
that-
we think,
So
Is that-
you will
is it-
need to have a quorum in-house.
Is that because of the limitation on our IT, or is that because of something that I'm not aware of under the governor's order?
I think that's because of our system.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Is there any possibility that could be
Yeah, upgraded.
upgraded or just a way to accommodate that? So,
well, you guys have to think, we only have 3 IT people, so having 2 run a virtual and an in-person meeting, I don't know if that's the reason, but
Well,
if,
hold on. I just got another response. It says committee, commissions, etc. Then it says, no, it's because of FOIA. Well, that's not necessarily true because it's only the commissioners that cannot meet virtually when we go to in-house meetings.
What you got to remember is that the standard FOIA rules have been changed under the governor's order. So we're still operating under
Right.
his order, which allows for virtual meetings. Right now, you don't have a quorum present in City Hall, and nothing changed in the 29th modification other than there's an allowance now to participate in public or in person. It didn't change the requirement. It didn't go back to traditional FOIA saying that a quorum had to be present in City Hall. So
Right.
I think that's the right answer, but I can work it out with IT and see if there's a way we can accommodate virtual participation.
Okay.
But we just may not be able to. And if we're not able to, as long as there's a quorum present virtually, or I mean, as long as there's a quorum present in City Hall, we'll be able to go forward.
okay.
Under the governor's order.
Right.
Well, a
Okay.
quorum is only 3, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I think we're good. I mean, I think we'll have a quorum, but it would be great if you could be take part,
No, I'll do my best.
Okay. And that would be also the same for our regular meeting, or is this subject to change as time goes on? Like, I'm just thinking in terms of Katie, if Katie could, if you were able to do it remotely, could you do it on the 28th?
If I could do it remotely, well, I'll put it to you this way. I'm not, I think I could, but
Okay.
I'm
I'm
not
not gonna nail you at all.
100% sure. And I say that because my internet connection where I'm going is very spotty. So, but if I can, I could, yes. If I can get on the internet, then yes, I can.
Right, okay. I'm just weighing our options here. Okay. So, Ann,
Yeah,
you lit up. I didn't know if you were making a comment. I'm sorry.
no,
Okay. All right. I mean, I was fine with this discussion. I didn't necessarily want to belabor it if everybody's kind of okay. If we're okay with you know, and I'll be providing some guidance, you know, just in terms of, you know, collecting our thoughts and recommendations and so forth. But plan on you know, us getting together on the 14th at City Hall for those who can, and hopefully we'll be able to accommodate those who are doing so remotely, and we can you know, continue this discussion and hopefully have you know, we can come to some conclusions, recommendations that then we can discuss and approve at our June meeting, in addition to whatever else we're going to have at our June meeting.
Funky, can I chime in for 30 seconds?
I'm sorry.
Can I chime in for 30 seconds?
Oh, please.
First of all, thank you very much. This has been an extremely helpful discussion for me. I've taken lots of notes. Many of the things that have been said are consistent with the feedback I've gotten from the tree committee as well, the Trees and Green Infrastructure Committee that's here.
Probably because a lot of it's my stuff that I keep saying.
Overall, and you know, and hearing from Liz, it's just been extremely helpful. The only thing I'll add, by the way, about the whole remote thing is, and even in previous years, there have been some participation remotely at a committee meeting in the commissioner's room, because I remember using the little, you know, spaceship, a microphone on the table for that purpose. However, they're not video. We've all gotten used to being on video. And my understanding is that when we go back in the commissioner's room, any outside participation would be audio only, which I personally feel is harder to manage because you can't see somebody, so you don't know when to speak, all that. I understand it's allowed, but I believe that unless the technology internally can be changed, that we are talking about audio only participation, just so you know, that's my understanding anyway.
Okay.
I think you're right about that, Commissioner. And also, I do think there's an encouragement within the administration to try to go back to in-person meetings. So we shouldn't make virtual participation, you know, the default. It should be sort of the exception to the rule once we go back to in-person meetings.
Well, and at the same time, I'm glad it's being allowed in the short run, because I think there's going to be a transition period for a lot of people.
I agree.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Chair,
Okay. Well,
Chair,
yes.
one last thing. When you're communicating among each other and people are going to be sending in their comments to you, if you could also copy me on them,
Absolutely.
because that will become part of the record.
Okay, sure. Okay. Now, it's just in terms of just being copied on an email or something like that, the communication in that regard. And
Right.
any materials that are sent. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I think we hopefully have an understanding where the direction we're headed here, and you know, I'll be sending things out and obviously copying Ann, City Secretary, and hopefully we can formulate some valuable comments to be included in the discussions with the commissioners, mayor and commissioners. So I'm going to suggest now that I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Is there any other comments before we do that? I'm not seeing any. It's okay to do that, Ann? I think we are.
Yes, it is, Chair.
There we go. So have a great rest of your morning, and we'll be in touch. Thank